When does the day begin? A doctrinal proof that the biblical day begins at evening. Founder and Apostolic Overseer John Shane Vaughn, First Harvest Ministries International. A certain question continues to rise in our assembly concerning the biblical definition of a day, specifically whether the day begins at evening or at dawn. This is not a minor matter of preference. It is a foundational, calendrical question that affects every Sabbath, every feast, every appointed time of Yahweh. Get it wrong, and the entire calendar shifts. Get it wrong, and you are keeping the Sabbath on a different day than Yahweh defined. This document presents the full biblical, textual, historical, and logical case for the beginning of the biblical day. It then addresses every objection based by those who advocate at dawn beginning, and demonstrates why each fails under examination. The conclusion of this study is not tentative. The statutory language of Scripture is explicit. The Exodus narrative creates irreconcilable pressure on the dawn beginning position, and the passion of Yeshua the Messiah is only calendrical coherent on an evening beginning framework. Each proof stands on its own. Together, they form a case that the dawn beginning position cannot harmonize without contradiction. Proof 1. The 6 consecutive evening-morning formulas of Genesis 1. The first and most foundational proof is also the simplest. Moses, writing under the inspiration of Yahweh's Spirit, recorded the creation of day using a consistent, unvarying formula. And that formula places evening before morning without a single exception across all 6 creation days. And the evening and the morning were the first day, Genesis 1 verse 5. And the evening and the morning were the second day, Genesis 1 verse 8. And the evening and the morning were the third day, Genesis 1 verse 13. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day, Genesis 1 verse 19. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day, Genesis 1 verse 23. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day, Genesis 1 verse 31. 6 times, 6 consecutive days, 6 unbroken repetitions of the same formula. Evening first, morning second. Moses did not write morning, evening once. He did not alternate. He did not vary. He wrote Erev Boker, evening, morning, 6 times in succession with the precision of a man recording a divine pattern, not describing a cultural convention. The Hebrew word Erev means evening, the going down of the sun, the onset of darkness. The Hebrew word Boker means morning, the breaking of dawn. Erev precedes Boker in every single instance. This is not accident. This is not poetic license. This is Yahweh establishing the structure of time itself at the very foundation of creation. The burden of proof falls entirely on those who claim the day begins at dawn. They must explain why Moses wrote evening, morning 6 consecutive times, if he meant morning, evening. Under a dawn beginning reading, that consistency creates a problem without a solution. The dawn beginning position requires us to believe that Moses consistently placed evening before morning as a literal formula, while actually meaning that the day begins with the morning that follows. This is grammatically incoherent. In plain Hebrew, Erev is first, Boker is second. The day is defined by what comes first. On the merism objection, some have proposed that evening and morning is a merism, a figure of speech using 2 extremes to express totality, meaning simply a complete day's cycle with no subsequential implication. This proposal fails on a single observation. A merism works by pairing 2 terms whose order is interchangeable. High and low could just as well be written low and high, without changing the meaning. If Erev Boker were a merism for complete day, then Boker Erev would mean the same thing, and Moses could have written it either way at any point across 6 consecutive creation days without changing the sense. He never once reversed the order, not in 6 consecutive uses. If this were a merism, that unbroken consistency is inexplicable. If this is a sequential formula establishing the structure of the day, the unbroken consistency is exactly what we would expect. The merism reading cannot account for this consistency. The sequential reading demands it. Proof 2. The explicit statutory definition of Yahweh, Leviticus 23, verse 32. If 6 consecutive creation formulas were not enough, Yahweh removed all possible ambiguity by defining the high Sabbath boundary in explicit statutory language. This is not inference. This is not tradition. This is direct, divine legislation recorded in the Torah. It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest, and ye shall afflict your souls. In the 9th day of the month at even, from even unto even shall ye celebrate your Sabbath. Leviticus 23, verse 32. From even unto even, Yahweh defines the high Sabbath, his own holy day, the day he sanctified at creation, as running from evening to evening. He did not say from morning to morning. He did not say from midnight to midnight. He said even to even. This verse speaks of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the holiest day on the Hebrew calendar. It begins on the 9th day of the 7th month at even, meaning the evening that begins the 10th day. The day of the 10th of Tishri begins at the evening of the 9th. Yahweh himself states the sequence that then defines it as the model for Sabbath observance. Some have suggested this verse actually supports a morning beginning because the evening is associated with the previous day. This misreads the text entirely. The evening of the 9th launching the 10th is precisely the evening beginning argument. Yahweh is stating that the 10th of Tishri, Yom Kippur, begins at the evening that closes the 9th. This is the evening beginning operating exactly as we describe it. From even unto even, yet shall ye celebrate your Sabbath. This is not tradition. This is Torah. Any calendar that contradicts the statutory boundary contradicts Yahweh's own legislative language, not this ministry's interpretation of it. Proof 3. Nehemiah's administrative confirmation. Nehemiah 13, verse 19. The book of Nehemiah provides real-world administrative confirmation of the evening beginning, not theological argument, but practical governance. Nehemiah, governing Jerusalem under the authority of Torah, made a specific decision about the Sabbath that only makes sense on an evening-to-evening calendar. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. Nehemiah 13, verse 19. When the gates began to be dark before the Sabbath, Nehemiah shut them. He did not wait until the following morning. He shut them at the darkening, because the darkening was the beginning of the Sabbath. This is a governor of Jerusalem making administrative decision that only makes sense on an evening beginning calendar. This evidence is pre-rabbinic, Second Temple period, centuries before the Talmud. Those who claim the evening beginning is a later rabbinic invention must account for Nehemiah shutting the gates at darkness. They cannot. Proof 4. The New Covenant Confirmation. Mark 1, verse 32. And they went into Capernaum, and straightway on the Sabbath day he entered into the synagogue and taught. Mark 1, verse 21. And at even, when the sun did set, they brought up unto him all that were diseased, and them that were possessed with devils. Mark 1, verse 32. The sequence is plain. Yeshua taught on the Sabbath. The people waited. When the sun set, they brought the sick. Why did they wait until sunset? Because the Sabbath was still in force until that moment. The moment the sun set, the Sabbath ended. The new day began, and it became permissible to carry the sick through the streets. If the Sabbath ended at sunrise, they would have brought the sick at sunrise. They waited for sunset. This is New Covenant eyewitness evidence recorded in the presence of Yeshua himself, who never corrected it, never rebuked it, but simply healed everyone who came. He operated within the evening-to-evening calendar without objection, because it was the correct calendar, established by Yahweh at creation. Proof 5. The Passover boundary legislation, Exodus 12, verse 18. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread, until the 21st day of the month, at even. Exodus 12, verse 18. From the 14th at even to the 21st at even. 7 days defined by 2 evening boundaries. Yahweh's feast legislation is written on an evening beginning calendar. The lamb was also killed on the 14th, specifically between the evenings. Exodus 12:6. Blood and meal at evening, all within the 14th of Aviv, a day that began at the previous evening. There is no other way to read this statute. Notice, you shall eat unleavened bread. Why? Because the evening of the 14th was in fact the beginning of the first day of unleavened bread. If unleavened bread did not begin until a sunrise day, then they could have eaten whatever bread they wanted at Passover. Proof 6. The Exodus narrative, the definitive calendrical proof. Every proof presented thus far stands on its own. Together they build a cumulative case the dawn beginning position must address. But the Exodus narrative provides the most concentrated test because it places multiple scriptural dated events on the same calendar day, and only one framework keeps them there without contradiction. And they departed from Ramses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. On the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with an high hand. Numbers 33:3. The departure from Egypt occurred on the 15th of Aviv. This is settled by Numbers 33:3. Now observe what the scripture places on the same 15th, and ask on what calendar all of these events belong to the same day. The midnight plague, Exodus 12, verse 29. And it came to pass that at midnight Yahweh smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. Exodus 12, verse 39. The plague fell at midnight. The departure was on the 15th. If the 15th began at dawn, midnight would still be in the 14th, placing the central act of judgment on the wrong day. The only framework that places the midnight plague, the royal command to depart, and the departure all on the 15th is an evening beginning calendar, where the 15th began at the previous sunset long before midnight. The royal command, Exodus 12, verse 31. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night, and said, Rise up, and get ye forth from among my people. Exodus 12, verse 31. Pharaoh called for Moses by night, and issued the command to leave by night. This was the moment that the high hand began to move on behalf of the children of Israel. This was not a preliminary conversation. This was the authoritative royal decree of emancipation. This was the beginning of the departure, which happened in the dark hours of the night on the 15th of Aviv. This first act of the bringing out happened in the darkness. In the night of the 15th of Aviv, Yahweh brought Israel out by night, because the night was the 15th. The 15th began at the previous evening. The command to leave was the first act of the bringing out, and it was issued in the darkness of the 15th. Yahweh brought them out by night, because the night was the 15th, and the 15th began at the previous evening. Deuteronomy 16, verse 1, Yahweh's own testimony. Observe the month of Aviv, and keep the Passover, unto Yahweh thy God. For in the month of Aviv, Yahweh thy God brought thee out of Egypt by night. Deuteronomy 16, verse 1. Yahweh himself declares he brought Israel out by night. This is the divine autobiography of the Exodus. Those who hold a dawn beginning must explain why Yahweh says by night, when on their dawn beginning calendar the 15th of Aviv had not yet begun when that night was occurring. They cannot do so without contradicting Yahweh's own statement. The stay until morning command, rightly understood. Dawn beginning advocates that Exodus 12 verse 32, verse 22. None of you shall go out until the morning. As evidence, the day began at morning. This is the fundamental misreading. The command was a protective order, not a calendrical instruction. The destroying angel was in the streets. The blood on the doorpost was Israel's covering, but only while they remained under it. By the time morning arrived, the plague had already fallen at midnight. Pharaoh had already risen and issued the command to leave. The emancipation had already been legally accomplished. They were set free by a mighty hand during the night time of the 15th of Aviv. All in the night of the 15th. The morning was not the beginning of the 15th. It was the signal that Yahweh's nighttime work was complete, and it was safe to walk into the streets. Israel walked out into a morning of a day that had already been underway since the previous evening. The unified timeline. On an evening beginning calendar such as ours, every event falls on its correct day. 14th Aviv evening, lamb killed between the evenings, blood applied. Passover meal eaten. 14th of Aviv ends. The 15th of Aviv midnight. Destroyer passes. All firstborn struck. Pharaoh rises. The 15th Aviv still night. Pharaoh summons Moses by night. Issues royal command. Get out. This is the first act of the Exodus. 15th of Aviv pre-dawn. Israel, having spoiled Egypt, assembles. Prepares to march. Many people think they did not spoil the Egyptians until the 15th of Aviv on their way out, but that is incorrect. Exodus 11, verses 2 through 3. Yahweh commanded Moses to speak this before the final plague. Speak now in the ears of the people, and let every man borrow of his neighbor, and every woman of her neighbor, jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And Yahweh gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. 15th of Aviv morning. The physical march begins. Israel walks out as a free people into the morning of a day that began the previous evening. Every scriptural statement is honored. The plague is on the 15th. The command is on the 15th. The departure is on the 15th. Numbers 33 verse 3, Deuteronomy 16 verse 1, Exodus 12 verse 29, and 12 verse 31 are all confirmed simultaneously. The entire narrative coheres, but only on an evening beginning calendar. On a dawn beginning calendar, the midnight plague falls on the 14th, while the departure falls on the 15th. The central act of judgment and the royal command of emancipation land on the wrong day. Yahweh's own declaration that he brought Israel out by night becomes irreconcilable with Numbers 33 verse 3. The same day coherence principle. This is the formal logical principle at work in the Exodus argument, and it applies wherever Scripture assigns multiple events to the same calendar day. A valid biblical calendar must allow every event assigned to a given day to actually occur within the boundaries of that day. When a proposed calendar framework forces events that Scripture assigns to the same day onto different days, that framework creates a contradiction. Not a mystery, not a difficulty, but a logical contradiction that the framework itself generates. Under the dawn beginning framework, the midnight plague is on the 14th. The departure is on the 15th. Scripture assigns both to the same redemptive sequence that Numbers 33:3 dates to the 15th. The dawn beginning calendar splits what Scripture unifies. Under the evening beginning framework, the midnight plague, the royal command by night, and the morning departure are all on the 15th, because the 15th began at the previous evening. Scripture is unified. No contradiction is generated. Any calendar that forces Yahweh's own timeline into internal contradiction cannot be the calendar Yahweh defined. The evening beginning does not create contradictions. The dawn beginning does. Proof 7. The Passion Narrative. 2 appointed days, 1 calendar. The Passion of Yeshua the Messiah provides a 2-level confirmation of the evening beginning. The first level is purely calendrical. The timing of events in the Passion sequence is only internally consistent on an evening beginning calendar. The second level is theological. The cup theology of the Passover meal illuminates why the calendar matters. These are presented together because they reinforce each other, but they are distinct arguments. The calendrical case stands entirely on the timing of events. The theology deepens its meaning. The Passover meal, the cup declared and deliberately not drunk. At the Passover meal, Yeshua took the cup, declared it, his blood of the renewed covenant, and he gave it to the disciples. But he did not drink it himself. and then stated explicitly why. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine, until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Matthew 26, verse 29. This is the foundational statement, direct, unambiguous, requiring no interpretation. Yeshua deliberately withheld the completion of the Passover cup. He announced that the cup would not be consummated that night. Not in the upper room, not in Gethsemane, not on the cross. The Passover cup was declared to still be an open, unfilled cup. Its fulfillment was assigned to the kingdom age, the seventh-day millennium kingdom of Yahweh on earth. This means the Passover is not a completed event. It is forward-pointing, covenant in motion, moving through history toward its appointed consummation at the table of the Father's kingdom. Every Passover kept by the covenant community is a declaration that the cup is still passing, still moving forward, and the king has not yet drunk it. Gethsemane, let this cup pass. When Yeshua prayed in Gethsemane, let this cup pass from me, we have long thought he was there begging for his Father to let him out of the cup, to set him free from death. We have thought he was sweating great drops of blood because he did not want to die. This often caused me to think, how is he the submitted lamb of Yahweh if he's still fighting death all the way to the end? How is this a surrendered lamb? After much study, I came to see that perhaps he was not there begging for himself, but rather interceding for us. The Greek word translated pass is parerchomai. This word does not mean remove or take away. Those concepts require ario or aphirio. Parerchomai means to pass along, to move forward, to continue in motion. This same word appears in Matthew 24, verse 35. Heaven and earth shall pass away, which does not mean annihilation, but forward movement into the renewed creation of Revelation 21. The word consistently carries the sense of continuation and transformation, not termination. Anchored on Matthew 26:29, where Yeshua explicitly stated he would not drink the cup until the kingdom, the Gethsemane prayer carries this covenantal weight. Father, let this specific cup continue its forward motion. Let it keep passing through history toward its kingdom consummation. Not here, not tonight. The cup passes forward to the kingdom. I find it interesting that just moments before Yeshua warned Peter that Satan desires to sift you as wheat, but I have prayed for you that your faith fail not. If their faith failed, the cup would not continue moving forward towards the kingdom fulfillment. While he was most assuredly praying for strength from his Father for what lie ahead, I am seeing more and more than perhaps he was interceding for us more than himself. The hematidrosis, blood on the 14th. Then, having confirmed that the cup passes forward, Yeshua sweats blood. Luke 22:44 records great drops of blood falling from his body under the agony of Gethsemane. This occurred in the night hours of the 15th of Aviv, fulfilling the blood requirement of Passover on the 14th to be applied before midnight, exactly as the lamb's blood was applied on the 15th in Egypt. Blood on the 14th, not death, blood. The death of the lamb was the only way to get the blood. It was about the blood being applied before midnight, the 15th of Aviv, crucifixion and death. Everything after the next sunset is the 15th of Aviv, the first day of unleavened bread. The trials before Pilate, the crucifixion at the 3rd hour, the death at the 9th hour, the burial before the next evening, all on the 15th. Numbers 33, verse 3 establishes that Israel departed Egypt on the 15th. Yeshua died on the 15th. The physical exodus from Egypt and the spiritual exodus from the sin's dominion were executed on the same appointed day, separated by 15 centuries, written on the same evening beginning calendar. The complete Passion timeline. Before sunset, upper room, Passover meal, cup declared. Yeshua does not drink. Cup passes forward to the kingdom. Sunset falls. The 15th of Aviv begins. Gethsemane, let this cup pass. Covenantal confirmation of forward motion. just before midnight. Hematidrosis, Passover blood shed from his body on the 15th. Night, Sanhedrin trial, still 15th of Aviv. Pre-dawn to the 3rd hour, Pilate's court, scourging, crucifixion begins on the 15th. 9th hour, death on the 15th. Before next sunset, burial. Before the Jewish high Sabbath of unleavened bread begins at evening. Future, Father's kingdom. Yeshua drinks the cup. Passover consummated. On a dawn-beginning calendar, this precision collapses. The hematidrosis and the trials are compressed onto the same 14th with the crucifixion, erasing the distinction between the two appointed days and destroying the prophetic fulfillment pattern Yahweh encoded across 15 centuries. On an evening-beginning calendar, every act falls on its appointed day with surgical precision. Blood on the 14th, death on the 15th, the cup still passing toward the kingdom. The passion narrative of Yeshua the Messiah is written on an evening-beginning calendar. Remove the evening beginning and the calendrical precision of the greatest redemptive act in history disappears entirely.